Hello, hello students. Hope you are studying nicely, and we'll start our day with a very positive note, on a very positive note, with a very positive thought, and that is the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just that little extra. So you promise me that you're not going to be ordinary, you're going to be extraordinary, you're going to be extraordinary doctors by putting in just that little extra effort that is needed. Okay, as I have already said in my previous lectures that we need just one seat, and for that one seat we are studying hard. Okay, so we are on the chapter of breathing and exchange of gases, and we are going to start today with bronchi. Okay, we are going to study bronchi. In the last lecture, I had already told you about trachea, and in this lecture, we are going to deal further with bronchi and then lungs and then respiration mechanism and then the questions. Okay, so we'll start with bronchi. So this is the thyroid structure that we see, right? This is the thyroid structure with the cricoid cartilage. And then there is this trachea, okay? And from there, it divides it into, at the fifth thoracic vertebrae, it divides it into right and left. It divides into right and left primary bronchus, right? This is the trachea with its cartilaginous rings, and this is the right one, and this is the left one. Okay, this is the carina that we had talked about, and this is the trachea that we had already talked about. Okay, so now what happens, it also has cartilaginous rings. Okay, so now what happens, that the primary, we say this, what we say, these primary bronchi, this and this is primary bronchi. This is right primary bronchi and left primary bronchi. Okay, so there's a very little difference in right and left primary bronchi. And what is this? What is that difference? That the right primary bronchi is more vertical. It is more vertical. Okay, so what happens, that it looks as if it is in continuation with trachea, in continuation. It looks as if it is in continuation with trachea, and it is smaller also. And it is smaller also. So what will happen if there is any foreign particle? If there is any foreign particle, the probability is that it will go in the right primary bronchus first and through it to the right lungs. Okay, so now this is right and left primary bronchus. Now this will divide it into secondary, or this will divide into secondary bronchi, or this secondary bronchi is also known as lobar bronchi, and this will further divide it into tertiary bronchi. This will further divide it into tertiary bronchi. Okay, and finally that will be divided into terminal bronchioles. Terminal bronchioles. If you remember, I had told you that the respiratory system, can be divided into two parts: conducting part and respiratory part. If you see my previous videos, you will understand conducting part and respiratory part. Okay, so this is the conducting part. primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and terminal bronchioles conducting part ends. From there, what will start? The respiratory part. Okay, so now this is the trachea, right? This is the trachea. And now this is the diaphragm. It is a dome-shaped structure. And what is resting on this diaphragm? Lungs. Our two lungs. Okay, our two lungs are resting on this diaphragm. Our two lungs are resting on this diaphragm. This is the trachea. And this is the right primary bronchus and the left primary bronchus. And now what will happen? It will be divided into tertiary, secondary or lobar bronchus. So what will happen? For that to understand, you need to know one thing, that in the lungs there is a oblique fissure. Okay, there is this oblique fissure, and this is the right and this is the left. And in the right lung there is also one more fissure, that is the median fissure. So this is what? This is an oblique fissure. This is also an oblique fissure. Okay. And in the right side, there is also a median fissure. There is also a median fissure. So what happens? It is getting divided into parts. So what this becomes the superior part. Okay, this becomes what? This becomes the superior part. This becomes the inferior part. Okay, this becomes the inferior part. And in the right lung, there is also a median part because of the median fissure. Because of the median fissure, right? So this, you understood that it is a oblique fissure, then there is this median fissure. So what happens? This primary bronchus goes inside, and in every lobe there is a secondary. One comes over here, one comes over here, secondary, and one goes over here, secondary, and one is over here, secondary, and one is over here, one is over here, and one is over here. So as we can see that there are 3 secondary bronchus in right lung because of that median fissure, and there are 2 lobar or secondary bronchus in left lung. Okay, you understood how it is going. Now what will happen? This secondary bronchus will further divide into tertiary bronchus. The secondary bronchi or bronchus will continue to be into tertiary bronchus, and that will divide it into bronchioles. Okay, so bronchioles. So that can be, first there will be larger bronchioles, then there will be smaller bronchioles, and then the terminal bronchioles. Okay, so this is basically what is known as the bronchial tree. This is basically what is known as the bronchial tree. So that the primary bronchus is getting divided into secondary or lobar, tertiary, and into bronchioles. So this is what? This is the bronchial tree. Okay, so any difficulty, you just see once if you have any difficulty in this. So here is the conducting part that is getting ended. So you have to remember one thing, that the right primary bronchus, right? Primary bronchus is first of all more vertical. It is more vertical and it is wider than the left. It is wider than the left. And one more thing, you might have seen that I have made this a little dent like structure. What is this? This is the cardiac notch. This is the cardiac notch where the apex of the heart. So this is the cardiac notch, right? So now we will go to the terminal. Now we'll go to the respiratory part. We had already done the conducting part of respiratory system. Now we'll go to the respiratory part. Respiratory part. What is the respiratory part? The respiratory part is the respiratory bronchioles. Respiratory bronchioles. Okay. That have what? That have alveolar ducts. I'll draw a diagram and then you will understand it clearly. Alveolar ducts and further alveoli. Okay, alveoli which is coming out from their walls. Okay, so alveoli are the main sites for gas exchange. Alveoli are the main sites for gas exchange. Okay. So respiratory bronchioles begin the respiratory part of the respiratory system. So let us now draw and understand. So if this is the terminal bronchiole that is coming, okay, if that's the terminal bronchiole that we have drawn, okay, if that's the terminal bronchiole that we have drawn, what will happen? What will happen? It will give rise to respiratory bronchioles. It will give rise to respiratory bronchioles. And what will be there? These will give rise to respiratory bronchioles will the alveolar ducts. Okay, with the alveolar ducts, and these alveolar ducts will have what? These alveolar ducts will have the alveoli. They will have the alveoli that are the main sites of gas exchange. They will have the alveoli. Okay, and what are alveoli? Alveoli are the main sites for gas exchange. They're simple cells, just one layered cells for easy diffusion of gases. Okay, so these are the all alveoli. So what happens? This is the terminal bronchiole with the respiratory bronchiole. With the alveolar ducts, and with the alveoli, and the single of alveoli is alveolus, and it is lined by what? It is lined by simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium. Very easy logic. Why simple squamous epithelium? Because of easy diffusion of gases, to facilitate easy diffusion of gases. Okay, easy diffusion of gases, since they are the main sites of gas exchange. Okay, so now we'll just revise once this what about the bronchi that we have done. Okay, so now let us revise and just see a little points of differences if we can think of any. So the bronchi starts with the primary bronchi, right? It starts with the primary bronchi. And what kind of epithelium do you think it will have? And will it have cilia? And will it have goblet or mucus cells? Okay. Yes, it will have cilia because it is the conducting part, and it will have goblet cells so that if any foreign particles come, the cilia can beat and send it back. Okay. And what will be the epithelium like? The epithelium will be pseudostratified pseudostratified ciliated columnar. Okay. Now if we see the second one, the primary bronchi will be again divided into secondary bronchi, and this secondary bronchi, it goes into the each lobe of the lung. In right there are 3, in left there are 2. In secondary bronchi, what kind of epithelium is present? It is pseudostratified ciliated columnar. So now do you think that it has secondary bronchi has cilia? Yes, it has cilia, and yes, it has goblet cells. And then it will divide it into what? It will divide into tertiary bronchi. It will divide it into tertiary bronchi. And what kind of epithelium it will have? It will have pseudostratified ciliated and columnar. Okay, ciliated and columnar. So primary, secondary and tertiary have the same kind of epithelium, cilia, and they have goblet cells. Okay, so now if we go further, what will happen? Bronchioles, first the larger bronchioles, and then the smaller bronchioles, then the smaller bronchioles, and then the terminal bronchioles, and then the terminal bronchioles. And what ends at terminal bronchioles? What ends at terminal bronchioles? Think and tell me. Yes, correct. What ends at terminal? The conducting part, the conducting structures end. So now comes the larger bronchioles. So they will have ciliated simple columnar, ciliated simple columnar epithelium. Smaller bronchioles, same, ciliated simple columnar. And terminal bronchioles, now the difference comes, non-ciliated simple columnar. Okay, understanding? So now, yes, ciliated, yes, it has cilia. And larger, do they have goblet cells? Yes. Smaller bronchioles, do they have cilia? Yes. Do they have? No. Now comes the difference. They don't have the goblet cells. Terminal bronchioles are non-ciliated, no cilia and no goblet cells. So what ends over here? The conducting part ends. Now what will start? Now what will start? The respiratory part will start. So the first part in respiratory part is what? Respiratory bronchioles. Remember, I showed with the diagram respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and what is budding from there? Alveoli, that are the main sites of gas exchange. They don't have goblet cells, they don't have cilia, and alveoli, I told you that they are the main sites of gas exchange. So they have simple squamous epithelium. Alveolar ducts also have simple squamous epithelium. And respiratory, sometimes they have simple cuboidal to simple squamous epithelium. Okay, so now let us just see once if you can. Okay, if you have got everything. This is the bronchial tree, primary bronchi. As and when I'm saying, just revise in your mind what I have told you about primary bronchi, what I have told you about the fissures in the lungs, and how when you are studying about secondary bronchi, then you remember the fissures of the lung, how secondary or lobar bronchi is going into the lungs. Okay, then tertiary or segmental bronchi, bronchioles and terminal bronchioles. So here what happens, this is the conducting part. Now we know about the epitheliums also, we know about the various cells that are present. Now the respiratory bronchioles, alveolar bronchioles, alveolar sacs and alveoli, they represent what? They represent the respiratory part. Okay, so this is the bronchial tree that they are showing. This is the larynx that they are showing. Okay, I can just increase the size so that you can easily see it. Okay, and this is the trachea with its cartilaginous rings, and it's going inside. You can see this fissure, and this is a median fissure. So this is getting divided. Okay, see how it's like a tree like structure, and that's why it is known as a bronchial tree. Can you see how fine it is getting, how fine it is becoming? Okay, and this that they are showing a muscular sheet of layer, that is the diaphragm. Okay, so we know larynx, trachea, carina, primary bronchus, secondary bronchus, tertiary bronchus, bronchiole, two terminal bronchiole, diaphragm, same thing over here. And what are now these pleural cavity? What is this pleural cavity? Parietal pleura and visceral pleura. Okay, so I'll tell you this about these three things when we are doing structure of lungs. Okay, and okay, I can tell you about this also, because since you have seen, so you might be having some curiosity, what is this? So let us draw lungs. So this is a diaphragm, which is a domed shaped structure, and over here is resting what? The right lung. Okay, and over here what is resting? There is a left lung. Okay, there is a left lung. So now what will happen? This is the cardiac notch. So this green colored thing that I am drawing, that's the visceral pleura. That's the visceral pleura, because it is close to the lungs, and each lung has separate visceral and parietal pleura with a pleural cavity and a pleural fluid. Okay, so this is the visceral pleura, and I'm drawing it a little far so that I can show you the parietal cavity. And then there is one more layer, that is the parietal pleura, right? So this becomes what? It is closer to the lung. This is the visceral pleura, and this red is the parietal pleura. Okay, and this between space that you can see, there is this little space that you can see. This is the pleural cavity. Okay, and this is what? This is the pleural cavity. This is the pleural cavity. So we just draw this fissure so that, you know, right. So this is the pleural cavity. And what does pleural cavity has? Pleural cavity has pleural fluid. And what does the pleural fluid do? The pleural fluid helps to reduce friction between two layers. Which two layers? Parietal and visceral pleura. And what is the second thing that it is doing? It is allowing the two layers to slide over one another okay, due to surface tension, right? And so that these two parietal pleura and visceral pleura, they are both stuck together, okay, and they can easily move also. So this is what is helping the they both, if you take two microscopic slides and you put a film of water, okay, what will happen? They will get stick together, okay, and they can move also. They can stick and they can move. Okay, so actually this parietal fluid is helping in these two things. Okay, it is allowing the two layers to slide over one another due to surface tension. It means it's allowing them to stick. Okay, and what is the other thing? It is helping to reduce friction. Okay, so this is all about bronchi. Next, I will be taking a little bit of lungs, whatever I feel is left, and then we'll just revise few things, and then we'll start with the process of respiration, the mechanism of breathing, and in that we'll be doing all the kinds of muscles, the process, and everything. So let's just see if anything is missed. We started with bronchi, right? We started with this coat, and we studied about bronchi, that at the fifth thoracic vertebrae, the trachea divides into right and left primary bronchi. Right is, what are the two differences? It is, what is the difference? Not the two differences. What is the difference between right and left primary bronchi? The right primary bronchi is more vertical and it is in continuation with the trachea, and it is smaller. And about the conducting part, what did I tell about the conducting part? That it ends at the terminal bronchioles, and from there starts the respiratory part. And from there it starts the respiratory part. And there are 3 secondary bronchus in right lung and 2 in, because of this median fissure. Okay, so primary bronchus, secondary bronchus, tertiary, and bronchioles. This is known as the bronchial tree. Okay, here I'd like to tell you one more thing, that as we are going down in the bronchial tree, what happens, like in the trachea, there were cartilaginous rings. There were cartilaginous rings. Yeah, I'll take a new page and then tell. As we had seen that in the trachea, what were there? There were cartilaginous rings. Cartilage rings, 16 to 20 cartilage rings were there. Okay, that were preventing it from non-collapsing. So in it is these cartilage rings continue in primary bronchus to the secondary bronchus. But what happens as we are going down to the tertiary and to the bronchioles, what happens that these cartilaginous rings, cartilage rings, they decrease. They decrease, and what happens? They are replaced, not replaced, they are actually decreasing. So instead of rings, now there are plates of cartilage, and slowly this cartilage decreases, and finally in respiratory part there is no cartilage, and in finally there is no cartilage in a respiratory when the respiratory part begins. And when it is decreasing, this cartilage ring is decreasing. So what is increasing? The smooth muscles are increasing. The smooth muscles are increasing as we are going deeper and deeper into the bronchial tree. So it means that as we go from the conducting structures to the respiratory structures, what happens? That the cartilage rings, they decrease, and what happens to the smooth muscles? They increase. Okay, so just keep this in mind. So we were doing this, we have done this, that there's a cardiac notch and everything. Now the alveolar ducts, we came to the respiratory part, the terminal bronchiole, so it has rings but more of smooth muscles. Then the alveoli, alveolar ducts, respiratory bronchiole. Now what we did, okay, we did all this. Now we just did a comparative study in the conducting and the respiratory part with on the basis of epithelium, cilia and goblet cells. So there can be one more point, that as we are going down, the cartilage ring is decreasing and the smooth muscles are increasing. Okay, and so we did that in respiratory bronchioles, in alveolar ducts, in alveoli. Okay, then we saw a diagram. Okay, then we thought, what is these three things? Then I told you about pleural, visceral pleura, parietal pleura and pleural cavity. And what is pleural fluid? It is a fluid that is filled in this pleural cavity. And what does it do? First, it helps to reduce friction, and secondly, it helps the two this visceral pleura and parietal pleura membranes to stick together. Right. So from next class, the next class will be very interesting, more interesting. I'll try to make it more interesting with another. We'll start with the class with another very good motivational thought. And I hope you enjoyed the class. I enjoyed teaching to you guys, and I hope you are also enjoying. So, okay, see you in the next class. And the next class is very important. It is inspiration and expiration or exhalation and the process. And then we'll do the respiratory volume. So next class, as we always write, my next class is inspiration and exhalation. And I'll see if there is any point that's missed in lungs. I'll tell you that also. And then after this, we'll try to do some questions in that class only. And then after these two, we'll start with the respiratory volumes. Okay, respiratory volumes. So guys, stay home, stay safe, study hard, and be happy. Okay, bye-bye.